What's up? Welcome to a new episode of Movie Schmovie. This is episode 371. My name is Steve. I'm one of the co-hosts of the show, and as always, I'm joined by
Right.
And John. And
we
we're
it, guys.
The good time fellas. We need to
well, yeah, there you go.
There, you know.
I was gonna say we made it. We had a little technical difficulty in our first attempt to record. This is a special. You guys really should appreciate this episode because Ronald went through a lot of emotional journey he took. We watched the majority of it, John and I, in silence. Watched it go through it.
In addition to like calling us and starting group chats with us, Ronald's daughter has run off with his headphones and hoarded them so that he doesn't have them when he needs them.
She
I've started to enjoy our calls that she makes. She's I was on the phone with her for like 5 minutes the other day.
She's good for a group chat. I just got this picture sent to me. Can I show this picture? Is it? Let me see. She likes walks. So.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh, jeez.
Oh.
But there she is. Oh,
there she
is.
My
Lord. Look at that.
There it goes. It zoomed it. There it goes.
I can see that she likes it. You're not lying. She's really happy.
Oh, man. She has these little teeth that she grits on. Just. Oh, man. 4 teeth. 4 teeth that she's very proud of.
That's a very cute number of teeth.
It is.
I think science shows that that's the cutest number of teeth to have, especially if you're smiling real big.
4. It's crazy because we don't respect 4 teeth on an adult. If an adult has
that's a different thing. Different rules.
Hey, buddy, get across the street.
It's received a little differently.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's not workable. I'm just saying the rules are different. There's a whole different algorithm you have to apply to that.
I'm going to tell you something real crazy.
It's more of an opportunity.
Right.
I walked a homeless man to the ATM and gave him $20 today. This is all kind of related to 4 teeth. I'm not proud of that so much as I think I knew him. Super random. What? I think he was I knew him as a teenager. I was just like,
oh, wow.
He didn't know that I knew him. And I was just like, I think you get $20. I didn't tell him why. I didn't say hey, do you remember? That would have been too weird for him. So I was just like, $20. I only bring that up.
Very nice of you.
I think he only had 4 teeth. He only had 4 teeth. So reminded me of my daughter.
Full circle, guys. That's what we do here. We come full circle.
You know, in Pulp Fiction.
Pulp Fiction.
Oh yeah.
What did I say? Pulp Fiction. In
Pulp Fiction.
I think you said Pulp Fiction. Yeah, you got it right.
I love Pulp Fiction.
Like pulled pork and Pulled Fiction.
Pulled pork fiction.
Pulled Fiction. Episode 371. We're gonna go through some reviews a little later in the show for Shazam: Fury of the Gods, and also a new Hulu original movie called Rye Lane. But to start the show, as always, we're going with the required viewing. This week's pick was a movie that I selected last week. Came out this year, actually. Another recent movie, much like Ronald's pick. This one was called Palm Trees and Powerlines, and this was a film most people would probably only recognize maybe Jonathan Tucker in it, but relatively new. What's that?
Gretchen Mol.
Oh, Gretchen Mol, right? She's got a couple scenes. True. But yeah, this is a movie that I had heard about last year at Sundance or through Sundance. I think the co-writer director of the movie won some sort of award, maybe a first-time filmmaker or a feature debut type of an award. And I had just seen Jonathan Tucker posting a bunch about it over the months past, but it finally came out on a video on demand platform a few weeks back. So that was my pick this week. And I don't think either of you had heard of the movie prior, right? Or had it hit either of your radars? Okay. Yeah, it's a really, really tiny movie. And again, I think through Jonathan Tucker and maybe one critic that I follow had been kind of keeping it alive, I guess, until it got a release. But what did you guys think of, or I guess, John, you can start. What did you think of Palm Trees and Powerlines?
What a fun little romp.
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to be happy and just make your week the brightest it could be, throw this movie on.
I mean, it's kind of an insanely well acted and conceived and shot. I mean, it's I don't know. I thought it was really beautifully done and really artfully done, and therefore, when it goes for what it's going for, it really makes you uncomfortable and then takes you to a different place, then I mean, I can't think of a movie that's quite made me feel this way before. It's a bit of a like a. I saw the description said that this Jonathan Tucker plays like an older man who's kind of wooing a teen girl that he meets, and that's like the setup. And it said in the description, and his intentions may not be what they seem. And then as the movie went along, I was like, well, it seems to me that his intentions are exactly what they seem to me.
Yeah.
But then the movie actually does have another narrative place that it goes to that's a little bit more like, if you're waiting to see if it gets more heightened, it never loses that super grounded, very believable tone that makes you feel so uncomfortable, because it feels so plausible that this could be how some girls are groomed into a situation that is really bad, you know?
Yeah.
It's totally believable that this could happen. But it also does feel like the movie is telling you there is this other layer coming that puts it in the, I mean, that kind of like pays off these feelings you have that this is creepier than just what it seems like, which is already creepy. I mean, there's like nothing right about this.
For sure.
I didn't know what order we were going to talk about these movies in, but I'll just say that like if Rye Lane is a movie where you spend the whole movie like really wanting these people to kiss, then this is a movie where the people are kissing and you really wish they were.
She would run away.
And it has to do, the power of that has to do with how good Jonathan Tucker is at like playing just the right amount of charm, kind of mixed with the menace, that you can see how someone who's kind of trying to make decisions for herself and doesn't want her story or her fate to be dictated by anyone in her life. You can kind of see how she's ripe for the picking for this manipulator. And I mean, they're scenes together where they almost seem like they're striking up a rapport. It's like, I kept thinking, is there any way this situation isn't as creepy as I think it is? And then very quickly it escalates to the place where, this man is definitely, you know, it's a sexual thing for him. And then it goes deeper than that. So I don't know. I mean, I thought it was super uncomfortable, and right up to the last moment, it gives your heart another squeeze right at the end of like, fuck.
I know.
Again, if this is a realistic situation, to picture how people get stuck in a really bad toxic relationship with somebody who's just victimizing them. I thought it was a really, I don't know the actress, the young actress's name, but I thought she was amazingly credible as someone who's like, you know, pretty realistically intelligent for a 17-year-old, but definitely not worldly enough to see a few of the red flags that she should be seeing.
Right.
I think. Yeah, I don't know. What did you think, Ronald?
I was thinking about. I actually wound up watching it a couple hours ago, and it had me thinking about. Well, one thing I want to say before just the subject is really rough, and sometimes I think that there's this depiction of those relationships where it almost seems like the younger person doesn't have any agency in the situation, and I think that this does a really good job of showing you what it is. It's not that people that are her age don't know. It's just more nuanced. This more experience gives you the understanding. It's like we all can they can have sex, right? But like the consequences and the age gaps and stuff that you really start as you get older start to be like, ugh, that's weird. Ugh. You know what I mean? Whereas when you're younger, you don't think about them as taboos quite like you do.
Most people when they're 17 don't think of themselves as a kid. You know? I think that's what it is. And when you get older, you can totally see that that's a kid. And that's why it's like he's wrong every step of the way, is because it's like whatever their rapport could be, whatever friendship they could strike up, this brotherly, sisterly, whatever that could be kind of charming, it's completely decimated by the fact that his intentions are, he knows he's overstepping a boundary from the second he like interacts with her.
100%.
So it's like, but to your point, like she definitely feels like she's making a conscious choice, like to seek out this kind of different thing, and she thinks he's more mature than the guy. I mean, the scene where she's hanging out with the guy who's her age.
Movie? Did a woman direct? Okay, so
I believe it was directed by a woman, and I think it was co-written by two women.
This is why I say that there's an agency in it that I could tell when men write stuff, because it's like it's a wolf, but the wolf is a lot more like there's steps to the, you know what I mean? Like if it were real life, the three little pigs, the wolf would have taken his time. And there's something about the way that this guy takes his time and kind of meticulously kind of pokes at it. Because if he came with the energy that he had at the end, surely, she would not ever, that's the age issue. She understands that that's a predatory thing. But the way that he does it is so fucking, he kind of plays to her insecurities, plays to her like wanting to feel needed, wanting to feel loved, feeling super special. And then there's something special about an older person kind of being like having an admiration for somebody. But the way that he takes is just so gross. And, that's how I could tell a woman wrote it. I didn't even look it up. I was like, a woman wrote this. It's so,
I'm pretty sure Jamie Dack is the name. Maybe
it's a woman. Yeah, I think that's like one of the biggest takeaways for the movie is that like the way I think Jonathan Tucker's performance and the actress is Lily McInerney, who plays the lead. I think the way that he, John mentioned grooming, and I think that's really kind of like what this whole, the real arc of the movie, and kind of like how uncomfortable it gets, and like genuinely moments like where your skin crawls. It feels like it's that there's a couple scenes in this movie where I was like so uncomfortable that it's like it's almost like unwatchable.
Yes,
but
for sure.
I think that's that nuance in both hers and especially Jonathan Tucker's performance, is that like I think he's identifying certain. I don't want to say a type of young girl, but I think just the town that they're from, or like this town itself, it just seems that, there is like a lack of, or what's the word? There's almost like a lack of perspective among her peers, and like he is bringing the perspective that she seems to be looking for.
Right.
Yeah.
And immediately, like John mentioned, like their first meeting, he like kind of immediately like plays that hand, which is like more of like a protection that she really doesn't have, like either from her mother, really from her friends, like a loyalty from her friends. Like, she, in the movie, you see her friends like not keep secrets and like really show a lack of loyalty, like her best friend bringing another person around who she knows that she doesn't want to be around. And there's all these like little nuanced things where there's almost like a counterpoint that you see her with him, and he's like playing completely against it. And you can just see him like racking up the points in her mind.
Yes.
And her going deeper and deeper into a commitment to him, because like I think she is, that character is so lacking. And he just somehow, he's a predator, and he knows how to do this. And it's like, even with signs from people around them, around her, like the woman at the diner, and like, even just her friends.
Was great. That's with the woman at the diner. That was such a great.
Yeah, like mentioning his age, and just like, just common questions, I think. I mean, it's a really tough movie to watch, I think. And honestly, like even where the movie ends, like that final like 5 minutes is just like so sad. And you think there's I don't know, I don't want to really spoil the movie. Like we're kind of avoiding it, and I like us not to, but I think that
like it shatters any sense you have of like safety for this person, because she now has this guy in her life. So it's like,
right. And it seems like, even though you think like for a moment that you think that for a moment she has the strength that it takes from a circumstance that she unfortunately goes through. There's a moment with like her friend again, and just in solitude and just isolation, these moments alone, which you see a lot of it in the earlier part of the movie, that you can just tell like she starts to go through it in her mind, where it's like she's not out of this, like she's still on the hook. And that's really what's really sad, because it just seems like she makes a comment that like, why didn't you call me, or why didn't you come looking for me? That stuff is fucking devastating, because like that's just that need, that's that lack of perspective, that lack of attention, that connection that she just doesn't have genuinely. And it's really, really scary and sad that like, that character, a predator, would provide that to a young girl like this. And the movie does not end on a positive note. I'll just say that, I think. And I don't know, I think it's a really, really well written and made film. It's hard to watch, I think. And this is a movie that had a lot of buzz out of Sundance, and I had read a lot about it. in this last week, like some interviews with the production and the filmmakers, and like it seemed like a movie that like there was that buzz around, but like nobody really wanted to try to market and put this movie out because of what it's about.
Right.
And I mean, totally understandable. This is not a movie that I see, marketing around or really any kind of commercial.
I mean, it's disturbing. It's like if we say
around.
movies are disturbing, this movie is actually disturbing, and it's in a very real world way.
Yeah.
And it does, it leaves you with the messiness of the real world situation at the end, as opposed to the sort of like I think another thing, Connor Ronald, to what you were saying about if men had written this, I feel like the movie would have romanticized the sort of quote unquote innocence of the young girl more, and it would have been more of like some sort of savior narrative or some sort of escape narrative. But it's almost like because women wrote it, they're willing to be honest and say that for this young girl, there's no escape from the culture of rape culture. You know what I mean? There's no there's no easy escape. For her literally, but if you look at it as like making any, I mean, I don't know how much I'm sure you never know if writers think they're dealing with metaphors at all, but the way this makes you think about the overall picture, you said, Steve, this is kind of like the grooming movie. This really does make a lot of things. It kind of reminds me of women talking in a different way of just, it gets at a lot of issues that are on our minds these days. And that I'm sure as fathers of daughters, they're on your minds. But I mean, it's like for any of us who's awake in the American culture today, there's all these thoughts about just the world that specifically, young people, but specifically young women are being introduced into, and how 100%. It's not on them to have to make all those right decisions when they're 17. That's why the whole thing about how squeamish you feel about the Jonathan Tucker character in this is just watching him have no shame in the way that he does those things, Steve. And you're right. It's almost like a point for point thing of like, he makes her feel a certain way about talking to him and how he understands, and he's this cool guy. And then her friends do the exact opposite behavior that will make her feel. So it's like they're helping him. I mean, I'm not putting it on the friends. It's very realistic teen behavior, actually. But like, it does make you feel like, oh, this is the nefariousness of what he's doing, is that like he's managed to make her normal life seem that much more alienating. Nothing like more than that guy that she did like before, and then she doesn't, and he comes up to her at the party and he's being pretty aggro, and it's pretty gross the way he's acting about it. But you can tell that like maybe normally when the guy comes up and starts kissing on her, she's reciprocal, or that like, that's what he's expecting. But that like whatever crush she had or whatever interest she had in that is gone, because she thinks she's got this like, and the fact that she instantly starts keeping it secret shows you that she knows. She knows, like you said, Ronald, that like she's aware. She's not some kid who doesn't understand what's going on here. And even the way when he says, "How old are you?" and she says 17, and he kind of cocks his head and goes like, "Oh shit," like missed it by one. It's like the way he acts, and it's like that lets you know his intentions so clearly in that moment, so early. That he's like, what he's interested in is the fact that she's vulnerable, and that's gross and evil.
That's kind of what I meant by the agency. It's like creating this false sense that she can move around in the space with this freedom, and she's with an adult, and this like it's weird, man. The way he started to consume her world, and these threats that like seemed like jokes but really weren't at all, just heavy stuff.
It's like if a 17-year-old says to another 17-year-old, "I'm going to be with you forever, and I'm never going to leave you, and you're never going to leave me." It might sound intense, but it could sound like lovelorn romantic stuff. If a 34-year-old man says that to a 17-year-old girl, it sounds creepy as hell. Like Nikki was sitting here, I was watching it with my wife, and she was like, God, this stuff that he's saying is just so like you hear it said so often in a romantic sense, but it's like it sounds so creepy and evil in this context because of the way that he's doing exactly what you're saying, Ronald. The way he's using like sort of her exactly that sense you have at that age, that you're making decisions for yourself, and this whole thing of like, well, my mom's not here for me, my friends don't really get me, fuck them. I'm not being manipulated. I mean, again, I remember I was never in that situation, thank God, but I can remember several times looking back that I was, I did not know what was going on, and I thought I did when I was 16, 17, running around in the world. So
all right, well,
Palm really good movie, but
tough watch.
Hopefully we've sold we've sold how much it is a tough watch, right?
And I, honestly, I think it's more of just a conversation around consistently like how great Jonathan Tucker is, and you know, what's to come from this filmmaker co-writer, because again, she won like kind of like a first time award at Sundance last year for this film. So we'll have to kind of keep an eye and see what's up next and what's coming from her.
Cool. As a father of a 15-year-old, I want to tell you that the opening scenes between Gretchen Mol and the daughter were overly realistic. It's just how needlessly mean and dismissive the 15-year-old can be of their parent, who's just basically being like, "What would you like on your sandwich, kiddo?" You know, like you're being nothing but like goofy, and you're even kind of play acting a little bit like, "Hey, I'll be nice," you know, and you're still getting like, ugh. That scene, like almost word for word, the whole like miscommunication and not answering, and I don't want to talk about it, all that stuff. I was like, that was a very realistic portrayal of what a sullen teen experience can be like. And I think Gretchen Mol is like subtle in this too. I mean, she's one of those actors who's aged now into this kind of, she plays moms now. But you know, I thought she was pretty solid in the sense of like, she's not the most engaged mom, but it's almost like it's just the single mom we've seen in a lot of movies where it's like she's got her own thing going on, she's trying to date, maybe she's not as plugged in as she could be, but she definitely seems like she's trying to be as respectful as she can of her daughter's like needs. But there clearly are days at a time where the daughter's just unaccounted for, and that makes the mom seem a little absent maybe in those situations. I don't know how much we're supposed to be judging her or not. But like she believes that she's out with this one friend a lot. And you know, I had a friend like that who I could say I was at their house and then go somewhere else, and my parents would believe that I had been there. But if they ever called to check on me, then that was that, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I've ever told a lie, Ronald. Not here on the air.
Damn. That's what. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, man. Go ahead if you want to. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, like, when I was 17, I'd like almost die, and then I'd come in the house like, my mom would be like, "Hey, what happened today? How was your day?" And I'm just like, "Oh, it was good." Just like that crazy, not knowing who the fuck you were or what the hell was going on around you. Strange. What's the next pick? Who's up? Johnny, you up?
John, right? John.
Well, I had like there were some choices queued up. One is a movie that is fucked up and sad, and would put us through the ringer. And I was maybe thinking of that one, but after watching this movie, I'm not going to pick another tough watch. I'm going to give us a reprieve for a little while. And then another idea I had was an only in the 80s movie that is like two things together that maybe were never meant to go together, but we could decide we could watch it in the light of day. And I think it's one of those movies that's like only available like in full on YouTube, but that felt too risky. I wanted to go with something kind of that might actually be good. So this is a movie I've wanted to check out for a long time.
Okay.
And it is a 1971 movie. I don't know if you know the career of director Elaine May that much, but this is a movie called A New Leaf from 1971, starring Walter Matthau and Elaine May. And it's a story about a rich guy who basically needs to get his way out of debt. He's losing his fortune. And so he tries to find a rich woman who will basically bail him out. And then I think the plan becomes to murder her and
oh my god,
and, you know, and take her money. So he's like trying to solve his financial problems by like, you know, finding a rich wife, finding a sugar mama, and then killing her to take her money. So I think that's the broad strokes of the story. Well, I think it is a comedy. But I also think it's like a dark comedy. So, and also, you know, Elaine May is an extremely funny person. And, you know, she wrote and directed Ishtar, which is the famously not as bad as people think it is, and movie that has some really funny parts, but lots of other stuff that she has done. And, you know, she and Mike Nichols were a very influential comedy team when it was Nichols and May. They had a lot of influence on a lot of stand-up comedy and just in general comedy that followed. So she was like a, you know, quietly influential, very funny writer and person who only made a few movies, but they always had something kind of noteworthy about them. And she definitely was a kind of auteur in that way that you know, that a writer director can be with a humor style and a sort of outlook on the world that was very dark and wry. And so and also this is like a 1971 Walter Matthau performance. You know, that's going to have some juice to it. That guy's an incredible actor, and that was kind of his prime. So A New Leaf from 1971, and I think it's available Looks like it's on all the services. It's Amazon Prime for $2.99 and on down the line. So yeah, never seen this, but have always heard of it, and it's one of those things that yeah, heck, why not? Now that we're we need.
It's like it's on Pluto.
Yeah, it's on Pluto.
But maybe it'll be an antidote to the movie we just saw in terms of tone. Hopefully so.
Pluto is killing it, man. They have a ton of movies.
Yeah, dude. That and what's the other one? Freebie, the Amazon one. They've got a pretty big library.
Sheesh.
All right. So I guess we'll talk a little bit about Shazam, Fury of the Gods. We all had a chance to see that.
Shazam.
Opening weekend and
Captain Every Power.
I love that name.
He's so good. I love that kid.
Yeah.
Jack, what is it? Jack Dylan Grazer.
Yeah. And Adam Brody does a good job of.
Yeah, those. Yeah,
like playing the older version of him.
The two. Yeah, they're like a perfect. And actually, that's probably one of the things that stood out to me. Like,
let's start with that, because I bet you're about to say what I was going to say.
Yeah. Let me just get this off real quick, because I want to say this. Like, when you talk about the two of them and like how perfectly paired they are as like the younger and the older version of the superhero adult version or whatever of that character, when you look at Billy Batson and you see Asher Angel's performance as a teenager and Zachary Levi's performance as Shazam, I felt it in the first movie, but it was kind of fun and silly and innocent, and I was like, whatever. But this one, it's so the opposite. Like, Zachary Levi is just basically playing what he thinks, I think, a 13 or 14 or 15-year-old sounds like, even though he sees what Asher Angel's performance as Billy Batson is.
It's so subtle.
I will throw
distracting.
into that thought, Steve, that like, is Asher Angel that actor's name? I did have never. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, he's a bit bland.
He's super bland.
At least in this movie. Maybe he's a better actor than this. I'm not saying he doesn't like perform, like convince me of his, whatever. He's not terrible, but he's just bland. And so I think because he's bland and Zachary Levi is doing, like you said, whoa, I mean, come on, guys, I'm a kid. He's doing this exaggerated thing. I think there's so much Zachary Levi versus Asher Angel that it's like Billy Batson is almost like a non-character in this, like a non-entity. He pops up only for the moments where they need him to be Billy Batson, and then the rest of the time he's Zachary Levi. And it's like, I guess I get that, but I think that what you're saying, it's like it compounds that whole thing of just like there's no thought given to the connection between, like, if Billy Batson were maybe more of a character, there would be more of an understanding of how he would act like that. Like, that's his id. But that doesn't even seem like the inner life. The guy we see seems like this quiet, kind of brooding, thoughtful kid. For him to have this inner life, this id that is like a dumbass who's like doesn't
cracking jokes and all,
right.
You don't see him crack a joke as a kid. It's all
right, exactly.
It's all Jack Dylan Grazer's. Like, that's what that character is. And it's like, it's almost like Zachary Levi is playing the other kid as an adult more, than he's
so much so that I
Tom Hanks does it in Big sometimes. Oh, go ahead, Ronald.
So much so that I confuse them sometimes. I'm like, isn't that Shazam as a kid? Then I'm like, oh no, that's not, because that's the other.
It's the other kid. Yeah, right.
And he actually has a story too. Like, both of his versions have a story. Well, at least but like Billy Batson doesn't really have much of a story. They try to give him something with the mom. I think that's about it. That doesn't really feel like it's that much of a story. But I was going to say too that the thing about Billy Batson being kind of a recessive character and these other characters being more interesting is, I mean, it almost just feels like that's just a script issue, that Billy Batson could have had more of a story. They could have given, like, the first movie was definitely much more about his character, and this one he's just kind of, backgrounded to some of these kind of family characters. Right. But it is a Shazam movie through and through, because Zachary Levi's all over it, and like you said, he's in every scene, like mugging and doing everything he can to sort of tie this thing together. I'll just say this too. There's something about this series from the two movies. I think this is fair to say that there's like a horror vibe. But I want to say that there's an attitude, there's like a hatred of everyday people that I felt in this movie. Like, there's a lot of bystanders who just totally get jacked. And the worst deaths are usually like, there'll be just a character that is just walking down the street when one of these like demons appears, then they'll grab him and like throw him back through a glass window, and you just know that that's it for that person. But there was also a moment that struck me as like, I don't know if the movie knows what everyday people are like, but it hates everyday people because you know that scene in the porta potty when they use the porta potty like a portal to get to another place,
Yeah.
and then we see that there's actually a guy in the porta potty. He's like eating a sandwich.
And taking a
Nobody
shit.
would go into the porta potty to eat a sandwich. Like that is such like a low opinion of the common man who would be using the porta potty. It's like eating like a cheesesteak sitting on the toilet.
Yeah.
I just thought that was
Shit
a really
particles
weird
all
moment.
over. Yeah.
But yeah, but no, this is an interesting tone. Like there's a horror tone. Like I think that if there is something, I was kind of trying to suss out like what is this movie? What is the tone of these movies? And I do think it's to balance that goofy, lighter quality that Shazam has against like because it's magic. It's like the evil magic can be really scary. And there really are moments in this that felt like, I mean, it almost seems like, is it David Sandberg? Is that the director?
Yeah, David F. Sandberg.
It's like he wants to make a horror movie, I think, or he wants to make like a a PG-13 adventure.
Well, he has made. I mean, that's where he comes from.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Like he's the guy that made Lights Out.
All right. Okay.
And he did one of
movie.
the Annabelle. He did one of the Annabelle movies as well.
Oh,
I think this movie had a strange tone of like it was very kiddie in some moments, and then it is like goes harder than some of the other superhero movies in other moments.
Yeah.
So it's just an interesting, odd tone that sometimes works. And it was almost for me like you could almost like make a check in a column of that worked, that didn't, as I was going through the movie and it was about. It was not like totally equal. I came out in general thinking, okay, I didn't mind that experience, but there were so many little moments that were awkward or weird or didn't quite work, and then the movie just kind of breezes past them because it's got a lot of moving parts and there's there's some interesting visuals at some spots. I thought some of the creatures were kind of cool. I don't know, what did you think, Ronald, of the like how does this sit amongst all these other superhero movies we've been seeing?
I really enjoyed it,
especially amongst the DC world.
I really, 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 really enjoyed it. Even with all that stuff, it still was a fun movie. I don't know. It's just something about, even with all the problems with Shazam and the jarring difference between kid Shazam and actual superhero, I still have a lot of fun watching them. I really do love the family dynamic. Also is kind of the woman Shazam is Megan Good's performance. The kid isn't quite playing quite as silly and uninformed, and Megan Good is doing this like version like
a little
Shazam.
Bit more cutesy.
Yeah. It's very strange that's happening, but also maybe, I don't know, it is a kids movie. It feels like that's what makes it feel like a kids movie, those choices. But that also, here's the thing, I'm gonna tell you this, man. If I was like 10 and saw this movie, this would be one of my favorite movies. It has all the things I love. It has spooky ghosts, beautiful women that are bad guys, and then a family dynamic, like when they go to the house and the family's there, like those wholesome moments, like, I don't know, man, it really messed with me.
Did you feel a strong Harry Potter vibe from this movie? I had it.
Yes,
very Harry Potter.
I told Aaron that. I was like, this looks like Harry Potter. There's like a part where the ghosts are going through
but there's also like the library with the books that are flying around, and there's the pen that writes on like the magic paper and this kind of cool script. It really made me think, oh yes, this is definitely the magic thing. Even the burning violin felt like something that could have been like a Harry Potter artifact. I love that he uses it to distract them, and she says, "What is that?" And he says, "Great question, no idea."
It's just fun,
like,
man.
I don't know. I felt like that. That it was staking out that magic world. That's what I was just feeling, was that like the Harry Potter thing and the kind of what I said before about good versus evil. It definitely is. That's where it's finding its kind of unique spot amongst the superhero movies, I guess. If you want to put it in a nutshell, this is the one where it's like he's got magic-based powers, and he goes up against dark magic. And results may vary with like how well you like the villains and every little moment with them. But I do think the story of, if his power is taken from all these different gods, what about the people who had that power before it was taken and given to this dopey kid? Like, I do think that, like, in the middle of this movie, I did find that story problem an interesting problem for the character to face, of like, do you deserve this power?
Right.
And then also from that, like, how are you really going to keep managing this if you're going to try to keep your family safe? That stuff in the middle felt like a real problem. You know what I mean? Sometimes in these movies you feel like there aren't stakes, and this one felt like there were real stakes for the character in the middle. Like, and it wasn't a problem you could figure out a solution to, yourself. And I think that's a sign that there was at least at least some consideration was given to the emotional arc of these characters, and that idea of preserving the family is front and center, I think.
Yeah, I mean, and that's really what that. I mean, I kind of agree. I mean, I thought it was fine. I mean, I don't like it as much as the first one, but I think it's probably because I feel like a lot of the things that we're saying that are the best parts of it were stronger in the first one.
Yes,
you know what I mean.
totally
Like we're front and center in the first one, and even just the conflict and kind of like not the mystery that they're solving, but like what they're learning and trying to figure out what these two villains are trying to do. I think it kind of like lost focus,
totally
pretty quickly, in the movie, which kind of made it all kind of feel a little scattershot for me. And and having stuff like with the stuff with like Rachel Zegler's character and what she's doing in the movie, I don't know that totally worked for me, but I think there's just enough there to still. I thought the movie was just basically fine for me. Like I thought there's enough comedy. Again, like I really love Jack Dylan Grazer. I do like Zachary Levi. I just felt like that the performance was turned up a lot more in this one and felt way more unbalanced. Even if it's meant to be like John's saying, like some version of that character's id or the type or the kind of personality that he wants to be or doesn't let himself be or doesn't feel comfortable being quite yet. But there's no mirror to that in Asher Angel's performance, like in terms of any of the, even the quipping and the humor. Like it's pretty much absent.
Yeah.
Where it seems like the rest of the family, when they become their superhero, even though you mentioned the Megan Good piece, like it seems like they're more tied into what the kid is. There seems a lot more. The performance is much more similar to what the kid is. But I don't know, like, I just felt like it just felt a little like more unfocused than the first one. I don't know, like the script kind of was going all over the place for me.
And I do think trying to bring it back down to a simple conflict in the end of like he's got to take responsibility for the like
exactly.
And it did feel like they have to do some quick exposition here to give us a feeling of like this is all coming to a head. And then they do something with that idea that it's down to him at the end. But I do think and you're right, Steve, that what the strengths that this movie has were all there in the first one already, and probably were cleaner somehow, like a simpler version of the same thing. What did you think of the cameos? Like, did any of that stuff do anything for you?
Not at all.
Okay, you know what I think was very.
I thought they were horrible.
That last cameo.
That's what I'm talking about.
Not the mid credits one, but the one at the very end of the actual movie.
Yeah.
Did you notice the way that was staged so awkwardly that when the scene was over,
shot so weird.
The scene was over. The cameo person just walks around the corner. They just say, "All right, hey,
see you around."
Literally turns around and walks around the corner.
Yeah.
I mean, have them like wave their arms and disappear or something, but have her just to having somebody like see ya and then like leaving by walking around the corner. I don't know why that seems so like poorly thought out. Or it's like in a more artful movie, maybe you would find a way to cut without seeing the moment where people start walking away. Like a lot of times these movies at the end, they have a problem with what's the ending moment. And this movie really felt like it was searching for some sense of like, dun dun dun. It was really trying to put a bow on it.
That scene was so weird. That I think just like the staging of that scene and just like just the dialogue and the performance, like that was a very bad for me. That was like
it was bad.
It's like that the movie kind of like it felt like it kind of got down to a better lane for me, like in the 10-20 minutes prior to that. Basically at the end of the conflict of the actual movie, and what happens.
Same, Steve.
That got really strong for me.
That's what I'm saying. When it got simple again and it was just him versus the bad guy, I got reinvested and I actually thought it was an interesting ending. And then they went on for
they did that and I was like, oh man, what a weird.
But the cameos in the commercial
felt so cheap too. Yeah, no, it's ridiculous.
The cameos in the commercial.
Yeah, they spoiled it in the commercials.
I thought you were talking about when you said commercial. I thought you were talking about the Skittles commercial that basically takes up a whole minute of the movie. They actually say "taste the rainbow" twice.
I mean that's it's so silly, but I kind of feel like it. I don't know. I guess in the context, I just kind of looked right past it.
To me, it felt like if it hadn't been shot so much like an actual commercial and hadn't felt so much like an actual Skittles, because Skittles commercials get pretty weird. That I was like, this feels like it could be a Skittles commercial. It just was a little too lingering on it and too like beautifully photographed and too like telegraphed and all that stuff. But as a story point, I thought it was a fun. It's the kind of thing that it reminded me of a James Gunn gag. to have the idea introduced early in the movie of like unicorns, and then to finally see how that manifests. I thought that was, that was kind of fun, but I still feel like this movie may have like delivered it a little bit strangely.
I would also
think creature designs were cool. I will say that, since we're talking about that part of the movie, I think that like some of that stuff looked kind of neat.
Not so cool, I feel like, is the way they use Helen Mirren and Lucy Liu, though.
Yeah,
I feel like anytime you give Lucy Liu dialogue like that, and I'm just like, what is she supposed to do with this stuff? Like, even Helen Mirren, I mean, she has more like actual like conversation dialogue, like when she's talking with Shazam, and most of anything that Lucy Liu says is like a sentence, and then it's off to an action set piece, or it's some action that she does to like destroy something or someone.
Yeah.
But it's like literally she's got like 2 sentences at most in any sequence of scenes. It's just like, I don't know. That stuff was so weird to me. Like some of the dialogue was so bad and
so clunky.
Yeah, I don't know.
And there's a lot of
it's weird.
a lot of, even late in the movie, a lot of a scene where you cut to characters and they have to explain a bunch of stuff and talk through it. And it's like, sometimes you don't want so much of that, like close to the end, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
of like explaining what the stakes are.
Yeah.
But no, I felt the same way about them, that they were kind of wasted, and then that they had little moments where it's like, okay, her riding around on a dragon and shooting beams, it's like she's at least okay. She's good at that. And Helen Mirren towards the end got a little bit more to do. But I feel like they were kind of, it was weird seeing them, especially Helen Mirren. It was weird seeing her try to make something out of that weak script, I thought, for the first chunk of the movie. But it almost fit the kids movie thing of it to me, just be like, oh, the villains are kind of, it almost felt like Power Rangers.
I was gonna say.
And I was
just
like,
Shazam,
felt more like that.
This is like a kiddie tone that is not trying to be too serious, that I'm not gonna get mad at. But I was kind of like, oh yeah, the villains weren't the highlight. What do you think of the well, let's just talk about the broader sense of this then. This is like the first movie to come out in the new wave of knowing what they're doing with the DC stuff, right? Like, we know now we've got this, and we've got Aquaman, and we've got the Flash. Those are all movies that are coming out that are part of the original plans that have now been changed. And James Gunn has kind of put his stamp. I don't know that there's much he could have done to change or stop these movies, but when he came into the job, he said he's happy to be able to put a movie like Shazam out, and that it kind of fits within his general plan, and he said the same thing about the others. This movie does have a mid-credit scene that seems like it might be a tag on for the James Gunn part of it all. I don't know when it was filmed, or if it was always there to kind of connect it to this other thing. But I don't know. What do you guys think about this movie as like how it sits and might indicate those plans? And did you like, what did that mid-credit scene do for you, if anything, in terms of like, what they're trying to obviously connect it to?
Nothing for me.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing for me.
All right.
0.
Like, right. Like, that was one of Zachary Levi's most broad acting goofy scenes. So that was, that was kind of goofy. Like, and then I just didn't think that the way that they used the Peacemaker characters was like, it didn't encourage me to think that like, oh, all the James Gunn stuff is going to be great. But I don't know. Like, I don't know if that made you think about that. Like, if I'm not feeling particularly worried about the overall future based on anything that happened in this movie, but if if that scene was there to be like a little Easter egg for fans that might be worried about the future of the DC universe, I don't know that it would have won anybody over to the James Gunn knows what he's doing side. But I don't know anything about that scene. Like, it feels very much like a tagged on scene that could have been added later. But I don't know. Do you have any understanding of what that's supposed to do?
Well, I mean, I think I think what was intended was that they were supposed to have the Justice Society was supposed to be there in that scene from Black Adam, from the end of Black Adam. And reporting has revealed, and in the week, in literally 4 days after Shazam's release, basically that the Rock blocked that whole thing, and in trying to keep the focus on Black Adam and a Superman meetup and all this stuff. And but this was the alternative, which was to still have some representation from the Justice Society in this stinger. But man, I don't know. I don't even know what else to say about it. I just feel like they need to get past these last two movies.
Oh
They need to get
God.
past like the Flash. I cannot wait. It's actually like skyrocketed for my anticipation. Like I can't wait to watch the Flash. But I've heard early test screenings. Somebody that I know has been to one of them. That Aquaman is a mess, and that they're gonna have a bit of a trouble with that movie. And I don't know what the Flash does to Aquaman or what that plan is. But I mean, I don't see any future where any of these movies are involved with James Gunn's thing.
Okay.
I think that if Shazam were to show up in a film, in the future, or if the Justice Society has anything to do with what James Gunn and Peter Safran has in mind, it's not going to be in a Shazam movie. It would maybe he might pop up in a role somewhere or as Shazam, or the character of Shazam may be in one of those movies. I don't know even that Zachary Levi would be him anymore.
Yikes.
There's a lot of like speculation about his relationship with James Gunn and Peter Safran, and Peter Safran was a producer on Shazam, both films. So there's a little bit of question around that, and there's been a lot of like kind of gray responses about his whole involvement. But I mean, I just don't see how this movie, you look at its performance. I mean, we didn't even really mention, how underperformed it did. I mean, we're recording this on Thursday. I think it's barely at $40 million.
Did we all use Movie Pass to go see this?
No.
I Movie Passed the shit out of it.
You did? How many credits was it?
Yeah, it was 10. That's 58 credits. No, but I asked the woman at the desk if because she didn't seem to like the Movie Pass thing. It was my first time using it, the new one. So I hit the thing and it said, basically you can use your card to buy it and you've got till this time.
Yeah.
And it was like a half hour. And she was like, I don't know what's going on with that. Well, I don't know how Movie Pass is, but I think she was just having a problem with the card machine because it eventually went through and it was fine. And then I asked her, I said, have you seen a lot of these Movie Pass things? And she said she'd seen 4. I said recently, and she said she'd only seen like 4. But I don't know. Maybe she doesn't work at the register that much. But that was my highly anecdotal survey of if a lot of people are using it. But only 4 people since the relaunch. That at this woman, she's I should have said, are you full time or part time?
I really sat her down and interviewed her, John.
Right. Really quizzed her. But she definitely did not know what was up with it. But she thought it seemed shady. Like I said, it seems kind of shady, and she said, yeah, it seems a little shady. Anything like that that's like a different thing. And I said, it seems to, I mean, I don't know what's different about their model now. It seems to me it's the same situation that if people start using it like crazy, surely they're going to run out of money again. But maybe I don't understand how they've changed their model. So
that's a whole other podcast. Yeah. But ultimately, to come back to the Shazam piece, is just that I really can't see how, if there was going to be a way to include Zachary Levi or this film's franchise, it would have to have performed, and it didn't.
Definitely.
And it's not going to. Like, it's dropping off internationally severely. Like, this movie, it's bad news for them. And I just think that I think the Flash is gonna, whatever it does and whatever Aquaman does, they just need to get to whatever their plan is. And get out of this, because there's too many every movie comes out with the weight of the world on it. And trying to say, does this connect? Will it connect? Who's in it? Who's not? And it's weird because, you see Harcourt in there and she's in the Stinger, and like, that's James Gunn's wife. And it's like, it's weird. It's like, is she going to be in it? Because, she's in everything that, has come out recently, basically. Right. She pops up at the end of Black Adam. She's in, at the end of this, she's in the, the TV series and everything. It's just like, it's all just so clouded that they've tried to do their best to kind of separate it as much as possible. But the magnet of just like it wants to pull everything together, and it's just like, if they want to keep it separate, they need to just do that and just kind of move on. And I just feel like all the drama around what The Rock was trying to do in bringing Black Adam to like the center of the DCEU, all while the conversations were probably happening with James Gunn and Peter Safran, and the Henry Cavill of it. It's just a fucking mess, man.
The whole Rock overplaying the hand of what Black Adam could be. And then you see the Shazam movie that definitely seems like it should have had the Black Adam type villain for him to go up against, or could have really been good with that type of villain. And how Dwayne Johnson would have been good as the villain in a movie like that. It's just such a weird thing that happened, that those two characters now are separate, and now it's like you said, these are burned. These are burner phones that have been just thrown. They've been used up and thrown out. And I guess burned, I think you're right. I think you're right that like they probably won't do much. They won't show much fealty to these movies. But I do think that if they're going to have Shazam pop up in some kind of big event in the DCEU, they'll probably consider, well, are we just going to use Zachary Levi? You know what I mean? Are they just going to say, who cares? And like, we're going to have this thing, or are they going to, like, that new Superman movie, I guess, will be the first real indication of like what the tone of all this is and what this world is, because I don't picture James Gunn's world being that much like Zack Snyder's world, but I also don't picture it having to be that different in terms of like, you know, visual style maybe, but it's still going to have, and he's probably still going to be going for some of those same ideas of like getting into the nuts and bolts of the characters and reinventing them a little bit. But I don't know. I think his specific take might be different on a few things, but I don't know whether to be worried or anything yet. I think it's just weird that these movies have become such a big part of culture, and that it's a strange thing that what you just said, Steve, that now DC has to get through 2 more giant movies that may just be like write-offs almost. I don't know. It's just an interesting thing. I think that people are more excited about The Flash for sure than they were for Shazam. So that could still be huge. I had not heard that Aquaman was testing poorly or showing to be a mess, but I'm not too surprised, I guess. But I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm curious about all these movies, but it's a weird predicament. It's weird that they've gotten this far into it, and it doesn't seem like we really don't know what to expect.
Right.
Which could be good, but it could be bad.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Shazam: Fury of the Gods. It's in theaters right now, guys. So, and if you want to see it, go see it, because I don't know how long it'll be in theaters. There's a lot of. We're kind of getting into that time of year where, like, every weekend there's another, and this is going to be 2023 in a nutshell. Is that there's so much content coming out theatrically this year, like the bottleneck of the pandemic era, which we are still, in and coming hopefully out of sooner than later. All that content is coming out this year, and it just seems like we're off kind of to the races in terms of every weekend there's at least one big tentpole for basically from here out. I mean, we're talking this week we have John Wick 4, which you guys mentioned last week on the podcast. Next week I think or the week after that is next week Super Mario, or the week after that, and then we're going off, and it's just like you got Guardians and all these summer movies come out. But I mean, all to say is, when a movie underperforms like this,
Evil Dead Rise comes out somewhere in there too.
Which one?
Evil Dead Rise.
Right, Evil Dead Rise. Like, but I'm saying, like, when a movie underperforms like this, and you have movies coming out that will perform or that are overperforming, movies like Creed 3 or movies like John Wick 4 will be doing, or Mario. I think Mario is going to be one of the biggest movies of the year by box office wise
of all time.
It's going to be, it's a juggernaut. It may be the biggest. It may be the highest grossing movie of.
You're our guy in Mario Land.
Yeah.
It may be the highest grossing movie of the year, but I'm just saying, like, if people are going to see movies like Shazam, which are underperforming, are going to lose screens and they're going to lose theaters. And they're, if you want to see a movie like that, I mean, just go see it in the theater now if you want to, because I don't know how long it'll be there. Not in theaters is a movie that we've all been. I mean, I know Ron and I had seen it before. I think, John, you just recently watched it.
Yes. And
we rewatched it as well. But we got word about this movie, Rye Lane, which is coming out. We're reviewing it this week. It comes out next Friday on Hulu. But I think we wanted to talk about it the week before just to kind of get everyone's awareness up about it. And if you have Hulu, and it'll be out next Friday. But if you don't have Hulu, I'll just kick it off and say you should probably get it, because there's a great romantic comedy coming out next Friday on Hulu called Rye Lane, which it's so weird how early we got to see this movie, like 2-3 months ago. And it was like, when can we talk about this again? Oh, like in March.
It was like January 23rd that they sent.
It's crazy. Yeah. So over 2 months. And it's just like, but I think that's also the kind of situation where, like, you can talk about it whenever, but we'd appreciate it if you reviewed it around the time of release, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's also the thing, like, that's that vote of confidence where it's like, they know it's a good movie.
Yeah.
They're not hiding the movie. They're not saying don't talk about the movie, because this movie is fantastic.
So good.
I fucking love this movie. This is my #1 movie of the year so far.
This is like automatically one of my favorite romantic comedies of all time. And I think I can say this, and I'm not trying to condescend to the movie when I say this. I say this this is the cutest movie I've ever seen, like in my life, of just like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like every moment made me, like, if a romantic comedy is supposed to make you kind of crush on both of the people, and like want to see them kiss. And I heard someone, I think it was Scott Aukerman, say that like you can see a movie where the stakes are saving the world, and then a romantic comedy is expected to make you care just as much about, are these two people going to kiss? This movie took me on that ride, and it's like, it may seem kind of light and fun and silly, but if you're a romantic like I am, it's I mean, I there are highs and lows in it, but I was like very much like in my feelings through so much of this movie because of how much I wanted these two characters to like find each other. And it's not about them denying, it's not, it breaks so many of the conventions. And I think without spoiling it, we should just say that like, it's not your usual, they meet, there's all these problems, they do this, that. There's something so pure about this movie's depiction of a relationship. It reminds you of the Richard Linklater films, the Sunrise Sunset trilogy,
the Before series,
Ethan Hawke and Julia Delpy, where it's like, like to me, it's in that vein of like, it's in its own little category of these two characters who come into each other's lives, and then just, it's not quite what you'd call an adventure, but they're like, and it's not quite like just a conversation either. There's a lot that happens and a lot of filmmaking in this that's really innovative. But yeah, I mean, I was completely smitten. I mean, it's like, that's why I'm saying that it's a cute movie. It's because it's like, it's totally like a movie that you have a romance with the movie. It hits you, and then you're just smitten with it. And at the end, you're kind of feeling like flushed because it was so, I don't know, the sweetness and I don't know. I mean, obviously you guys dug it, but I'm so glad I finally got to see it, and I'm so glad we're finally getting to talk about it, and that other people are finally going to get to see it. I could see this movie becoming a huge, like, very reliable watch for some people.
Oh yeah, man.
It's magical. It's like there's a whimsy that this movie has. Man, there's a scene that's like burned in my mind. Maybe I'm kind of in love with Brixton, and the times that I've gone, I kind of fell in love with it. There's this piece where they're just kind of walking through the market and Brixton.
The market stuff was so like, it just was such a realistic depiction of those markets. Like, 'cause some of the things are closed and some of them are open, and it's like a ghost town, but it's also not. Yeah, it's crazy.
There's like a thing. There's a thing that they're doing that I try to do that I think you guys try to do too. It's just like, I mean, sure, we all want control of some aspects of our lives, but when you really let go and have fun, there's just like, I loved when the guy said what he did for a living. He's like, I'm a banker, and the guy's like, boring. It's like, just like so random. And he could have been mad at that guy and cursed him out, but it's just the randomness of just meeting people and how magical it feels. Even if it doesn't develop into like love for the rest of your life, like just having fun in that moment. And you have a woman that kind of comes in and swoops in and saves him in a way that I don't think I've ever seen before, in a way that I've never seen. Like, you always see the guy do that for a woman, but seeing this woman come in and kind of be this ray of sunshine for this guy in a real dark time, and she comes through in so many cool ways. Like, it just feels like, oh my God! Like I've watched it one time. And I watched it the second time, and I still felt this like electric feeling at the restaurant scene.
Yeah, when she comes in and sits down next to him,
I felt it. Like, it felt.
It's like it's a lightning bolt. Yeah,
I felt like I never saw the movie,
and it's like so fast and funny and well acted and well shot, and like you've never seen a movie like that. Even the way that restaurant looks with the guy playing the keyboard, it's like, this is real in a way.
You know that
this may seem whimsical, and you're right about the whimsy, but the whimsy is more real. I mean, it's like, it's not the kind of indie film whimsy that puts it in. I mean, as much as I love Wes Anderson and directors like that who create a world,
it kind of reminded me of like a Wes Anderson whimsy,
but it's
more
it's
real.
not whimsical in that direction of creating like a fake world. It's in the direction of creating like more of a real world somehow, or maybe of showing how like inner city life life can be kind of a dollhouse life. And let's be honest, like so often a movie like this would have some grim storyline or something, but to have like an urban landscape that is full of joy and full of life, and like you said, full of background characters and people kind of almost like a musical with people kind of becoming characters for just a moment, to have a line or two that's significant. But just the way they move through the city, like it's their city, and they're just their conversation is so funny, and the way that they go back and forth and little things that come out, like he's a grand gesture guy in terms of his relationships and how that becomes like an important idea. This idea of waving at boats.
Oh my God,
wave at boats or not.
I've never heard.
There's so many things that are like so simple and so pure and so part of the story, and yet they're perfect hooks to pull you along and get you to that moment at the end where it's like, you know, it's the romantic comedy ending where you want the characters to be in the same place because they're feeling this thing, and it's like this movie has such a fun way of presenting that, you know, that image, like, you know, like Harry running across town to see Sally on New Year's Eve. Like it gives you that feeling. I was exhilarated at the end.
They meet up there, and it's like the camera's kind of going around, and like that's some of the filmmaking too. You meant like there's a lot of fisheye, you know, stuff, and you know, macro shots and things like that look really cool. And like some of the tracking shots across like the hotel, across the different like apartments or the homes, like where it's kind of going like longitude across the room instead of like kind of turning. Like the camera's like on a dolly or something, but it looks really cool. But yeah, man, this I rewatched it, and I'm glad I did, just so close to the episode, because I kind of was holding this one a little close because like we didn't really talk about the first time we watched it. Just I loved it then, but like watching it again, and that's the thing too, like it's an hour 22 with credits, so like it moves. You know, you talk about like just that like that energy that especially she has, but that the romance has, that they're experiencing, you know, that walk about the town and you're just kind of following them, and you're just like, you don't want that energy to let up. And like the movie's runtime and the lack of like reliance on any kind of like side stories or like other characters that normally come in and like throw a wrench in the plans or whatever, like that lack, I think just lets this movie run away. And I just feel like, and if you like him, I was going to say you should, the guy who plays Dom, he's I don't know if you ever watched the show Industry.
I've seen it.
I've watched the first season too, like 4 times. And I think I'm gonna rewatch the second season. I'm obsessed.
That's the only place I really know him from. Like when I saw him, I recognized him from that. But
he's a young
there's
guy.
Honestly, like there's honestly like iconic scenes in this movie.
Yes,
and I really hope it finds an audience, because you know the restaurant scene that Ronald mentioned is just, again, like she's a lightning bolt, and they're them going off one another and like turning the tables on his ex and her, you know, new guy is just
Eric. It's hilarious. Eric is hilarious to hold. I love the kind of guy character that's so dumb that he somehow escapes this. Like he's
not a bad guy.
He's not a bad guy. And even in the end, that they pop up at that art show, and you get a sense that it's like, well, they're kind of that couple. Like she's a little bit uptight, and he's this goofball, but they seem to have a real thing going on. And I don't know if did you stick around to the very end? There's something after the end credits that was but that gag was great.
It's hilarious.
He recognized Eric's dick. I thought all that was so funny. And he had this great little aside when they've broken into her ex's apartment, Jules's place. And he's like smelling a candle or something, and he says, "What is that?" That's how I imagine Obama smells.
Yeah,
man. In that scene,
he says, "Is that sandalwood or something like that?"
In that scene,
and there's so many little asides, and I don't know. I wonder how rehearsed all that was, because it was brilliantly acted. It felt so natural.
There's a lot of like that boat was one example, but it literally is about like people who do this and people that don't do that. Yeah. Because that tribe line was that. Like when he said, "What about tribe?" That scene,
jazz
is really like, if you feel like that about a Tribe Called Quest when he shit on that record, that's really because that's also jazz. Like, Tribe has jazz in it, and it's like, if you don't like jazz and you don't like Tribe, who are you as a person? And there was a lot of that.
There's also the Terrence.
Is that Low End Theory
at the party? They put his phone on.
Oh, both of those are incredible. Would you say?
I think it's on Low End Theory.
I'm saying it's also the Terrence Trent D'Arby scene where they take his phone and they put it on at the party.
That's what I was gonna say. Like the scenes that like are now scenes like we're all fans of rom-coms. We talk about it all the time and like how they don't really exist anymore.
No, but that's like a perfect rom-com scene. That scene at the house part that the yard party, the barbecue or whatever, the cookout.
Yeah. And he's just thumbing through like the Dom's phone and like the songs that are coming on and it's like that. It's the restaurant. It's the karaoke scene to Shoop.
The karaoke scene is incredible.
And it's so great because like it's set up at the restaurant scene. Like there's so much payoff and it's an hour and 22 minutes. Like how did they accomplish this?
I think it's what you
so
said,
successfully.
Steve, they left out the bullshit. They left out the fake conflict. There's a little bit of conflict and a little bit there's definitely hurdles and there's definitely something that have to get past and growth for them to find each other. But like that stuff is more embedded in character. It's not this kind of, they're lying. And there's a whole thing where it's like deception and back and forth and misunderstanding. It's like they're pretty much into each other from the moment they meet.
From the jump,
for the moment they have a hurdle. And then they get past that. And then you get to see how, again, it's that fun of finding out how are these people going to find each other, like how is it going to click, and how are they going to pull it off filmically, and all that stuff is done so incredibly well. It's like it's one of those rare things where I was just like, nope, I don't have any issues with this. I'm 100% in love with this movie. Which is not easy to do, especially with something where the formula we've seen beaten to death before by many like lesser movies with a lot less just ideas in them. But
I was going to also mention, without saying what it is, there's an amazing cameo in the movie that a lack of great rom-coms. Arguably, some people might say it's one of the best rom-coms of whatever recent years. There's an amazing cameo.
Now, did that person help produce or something? Because that's the one thing I was wondering was why that person was in the movie outside of just the fun of seeing them. But it was a great moment.
I don't think so. I was watching this interview with the filmmaker, and she was saying when they were writing it that like they wanted to have the burrito or one of the restaurants to have like a kind of like clever name playing on like a rom-com movie. And they went through all these iterations of it. And, the one they end up on in the movie and who they have cameo, I think it just came down to them writing a letter or something and like getting in touch with the person's representation or whatever. And they're like, yeah, I'm game. Like, let's do this. And
it's such a funny moment. Like
it's fucking hilarious. It's so good. It's so good. Guys, please, if you're listening to us and if you've listened to us for 1 or 371 episodes, when we're this emphatically in love with a movie, especially a rom-com, which, again, you don't get many of them. It's fun. The movie's hilarious. The romance is great. The love story is great. The performances are great. The music is outstanding. And there's no reason not to watch this movie if you like a rom-com or even just a straight-up comedy. It's on Hulu. If you don't have it, sign up for a trial or something because you want to watch this movie. It's called Rye Lane. Again, it comes out next Friday. I don't care what's in theaters next Friday. This is my recommendation for your next Friday is to watch this movie, for a good laugh or watch it with your loved one and, enjoy. Honestly, one of the best. I loved what's the one, the Seth Rogen, Charlize Theron. What's it called?
Long Shot? Wasn't that?
Long Shot. That's the last amazing rom-com in my book. Wow. And this one is like is the now one for me. Like
that's
Long
praise,
Shot
man.
and Rye Lane is the go-tos right now. And you got to watch it. It's on Hulu next week. So can't recommend it enough. I can't wait to watch it. Erin didn't get to watch it with me, so we're gonna watch it again next week, and I know she's gonna love it. So
just because I can rock a Camino, don't think I can't fuck you up.
Oh my God, so funny, dude.
Well, I mean, even that guy, even Jules, it's like he's terrible, but even
everybody has a moment.
It's like you watch a movie and you go, I wouldn't mind playing anybody. Like I wouldn't feel like my character was a dud or got short shrift. There's nobody that's made like into the easy bad guy, and I think part of that lack of conflict that might make a movie seem light is part of why this movie feels so sweet, is because it is very even-handed. Even with the kind of broad comic moments, there's nobody who comes off bad, and it's not like that's a value. I'm fine with bad people, bad characters in movies, but it's nice to see a movie that has like a charitable view of humanity,
Yeah, sure. Amazing movie.
Great, guys. Yeah, please watch it. What else? I want to mention quickly. I did get to go see Creed 3, which I did use my movie pass for the first time on.
Okay.
That was, I think I went to an evening showing. I think it was 15 points. For those keeping track with movie pass. But yeah, I thought the movie was really good. I mean, like I have some nitpicks with it, and the biggest of which is honestly the biggest thing I walked out of the theater feeling was like I do feel like the movie was hurt by not having Rocky somehow in the movie.
Don't say that.
I really do.
Get him the fuck out of here, man.
Okay,
we'll see him next movie.
Henry and I talked about this. We didn't have a problem with him not being in the movie. We more couldn't figure out why it would be that Apollo would go through all this and not like have a phone call with Rocky, or why Rocky wouldn't come to the fight at the end or something like that.
I'm not saying that he needs to be in the movie like he was in Creed. I'm saying you see the shift from Creed to Creed 2 in terms of how much Adonis there is and how much Rocky there is. And I think this movie should have just been a natural continuation of that. Don't have him in the movie to be a part of the movie, but his presence should still be there. I cannot believe that the mother dying in the movie
didn't bring him.
That there's not a phone call. That there's no way in fucking hell Rocky would not be at that funeral.
No, you're right. You're
right.
For
her passing away. There's no way that would have ever happened.
Or
that's the part right that bothered me the most. That's it.
Or the other grandkids.
Anybody else? Yeah. You don't see anybody except for like him and Tessa, and that might have been a COVID issue. But I mean, like, I don't know. That's the specific scene that bothered me. Again, I really like the movie. I think it's really well done directorial debut. That's my one nitpick is I can't believe.
No, you're right.
I can't be sold that Rocky would not have either called. He would have shown up for that. Apollo's wife dying, like that would have happened. I
mean, I had thought about the fight itself being something where he would have wanted to give some advice or something or show up. But you're right that the wife dying is like the ultimate thing that like he would have been, and that would have been the place to stick in a short scene. Would have been him at the funeral saying, "Kid, I'll be watching the fight," and then maybe cut to him. In his bar at his house watching the fight. And then be like, "That's all you need." In fact, that would have been beautiful in a way to see him just sitting at home like a side character watching the fight.
I'm detached from it now. That
no, I think you're right, Steve. But I would say that didn't hurt my impression of the movie as much as it was more like that is just like a logic problem. It's like I can't get it out of my head, and I have.
That's what bothered me. It was like
it makes me wonder why there was no ability to work something out. Was it really just ego?
It's all ego, man. The only other thing I wanted to say that and it's more of a compliment than really a complaint, is that I really feel like just because of how great Jonathan Majors is. I really wanted more of what Dane was doing outside of the, interactions with Donnie.
Yeah, me too.
I feel like the decision to really kind of make him the villain of the movie when it happens in the movie is a little accelerated from the way I felt about him as a character, like the scene before it.
Right.
I felt like there was a lot of ambiguity. And like there was a lot of concern about where his character's motivations or intentions lied. But like if I had spent more time with him a little bit, like I love that sequence where you see him going back and like he's like washing his socks with his soap on his hand and like just like a real struggle that he was having and like kind of getting back into life and society or whatever. But I just really would have liked to see more of like what he was like away from his like quote unquote plan to
you're right. And
get to Adonis.
And the moment where we see that he actually is sort of a full-on villain. You're right that moment it feels like a real turning point in our opinion of him. Whereas before that, there's something very sad. Like when he shows up and that conversation, now that you've seen the movie, that scene in the restaurant where they're having a meal and Adonis offers him money. I thought that scene was the best one in the movie because I feel like they're both perfectly playing the way that Adonis is kind of being protective of himself, but also feeling compassion towards this guy. And the way that Jonathan Majors is playing, he's playing like, I mean, it's almost like Dustin Hoffman in Midnight Cowboy or something. He's playing a guy who's like, not quite fast talking hustler, but like a guy who's like got a totally different perspective on life right now than Adonis has. So he's like, he's one of those like, be thankful for what you got. Sort of, it's not quite that, but it's got that feeling of like, I don't know, you just feel both of their perspectives in that moment. And I think you're right that from that moment on, they start turning him towards that villain thing. And then there's a moment where it's like, oh, well, now he's doing this. Now he's manipulating the situation in a really evil way versus just he represents a threat because he's this very real piece of Adonis's life that is hard to reconcile. And that is a more interesting drama than just now this guy's a bad guy. You're right.
I mean, all said though, like, again, I really thought the movie was really good, and I'll go see every Creed movie that they do. Anything that they spin off or whatever they figure out to do. I love a great boxing movie, whether it was Rocky or Creed or whatever, combination of the two.
Creed 4, we love you, Rocky. Come back.
Yeah, right. But yeah, I thought it was really good. I was really glad I got to see it in theaters still.
I got a new script where I fight Creed.
What else have you guys watched? Anything you want to mention?
I'm happy to wait until we do like a segment on something. Like maybe we'll catch up with Ted Lasso or Mandalorian at some point during the seasons. I've been watching those.
That's a good call.
Yeah, but I'd like to talk about them at some point.
Ronald, what about you?
No, I don't have anything. I'm very behind on Mandalorian. So behind. So I have quite a bit to watch. So I'll be excited to talk to you guys about it.
Yeah.
I want to mention I saw Boston Strangler.
Oh, yeah, I saw that too.
Which I think that's on Hulu, right? Yeah, it's on Hulu.
I think so, yeah.
I thought that was fine. Like, I love those kinds of movies. I feel like it's like Zodiac Light.
It is.
Really interesting. I think really great performances. Keira Knightley and Carrie Coon, specifically Keira Knightley, but really interesting story about the Boston Strangler and these two women who were reporting on it at the time, who kind of coined the term and kind of put together their theory on what was going on, but ultimately kind of directing police who were really not doing their job towards the suspects, or suspects, wherever you fall on that. But I thought it was pretty good. That's on Hulu as well.
Yeah, it was decent. It was like exactly solid and super watchable. And you're right, very well done all around.
Yeah. And then what else? I watched one more thing. Oh, I watched Luther, the Luther movie. On Netflix. Did either of you watch that?
No, not yet.
The Luther, the Fallen Son. I watch anything they put out about Luther. Like, I fucking love that character. Yeah. I love Idris. The show is great. This movie is not as great as the show. I thought the movie is fine. Andy Serkis is in it. He plays the villain in the movie. He's great. Cynthia Erivo's in it. She's great. Obviously, I just said I love Idris and pretty much everything he's in. But if you're a fan of Luther, this is kind of like, you got to watch this just to, get a little bit more of him as Luther, and kind of get a cool little mystery thriller going on. And that's on Netflix. That came out like a week or two ago, but I just checked that out today and I thought that was pretty good. I think that's all I got. Yeah, that's all I got, guys. That's all I got. That's all I got. That's all I got. What's happening next week? Do we know yet? Any tease? We got John's pick for required viewing.
Tetris is next week.
Right. Tetris comes out on Apple TV Plus next week, so we'll be talking about that. And we may or may not be able to talk about Air.
Yes.
Depending how the scheduling all works out. I think that comes out the week after, but the embargo is up on that.
I just can't wait to see like all the scenes where someone's like, Michael Jordan, never heard of him. Who's this kid? There's going to be a lot of that sort of. Are we sure we can base a whole shoe line on him? I feel like that movie. From the trailer, I want it to be more silly or something. I don't know. I'm a little curious about the tone of it. Like I don't have. I get the reference for sports figures, but the tone of the trailer is like, it seems like it's trying to do two things at once, and I can't tell what the movie is. Is it going to be sort of we're digging into this little bit of history that's about this shoe, and so there's a little bit of like knowing humor about like that it's going to be this huge, but then there's this other thing of like the super inspirational music, like they're really trying to get that whole cult of Michael Jordan thing going.
Both of those things.
I guess it would be, but I wonder if that tonal shift, you know what I mean? You just wonder how it's going to work, because it seems like one half of it is like Jason Bateman and Ben Affleck and Matt Damon kind of riffing around this thing, and then the other half of it's going to be this like, the finding this star. I don't know. I'm super curious about it, especially the fact that Ben Affleck directed it. It's like, makes you feel like.
I think is this one of the? I think that this is the first movie that is from their new production company too. Ben and Matt's new production company, which
I think for something like this, you want to see Blackberry. Blackberry sounds like what you want to see, the combination of really, really goofy.
Well, that's the one where the trailer, you can tell what the tone is, and I would even say Tetris. You can tell from the trailer what the tone is.
This is going to be more reverent. Yeah, they're like, oh, I don't think that Michael Jordan doesn't play with his name. I think that's kind of what it is. He's like,
probably right.
Better not fuck him. I don't know what he sounds like this.
When he tells Ben Affleck, you got to get Viola Davis to play my mom.
Right.
He's like, okay, Michael says it. You got to do it, man.
You don't play with his name.
What Michael says, you do.
Yeah.
But yeah, the word on it's amazing, so I can't wait to see it. It closed out. It was a surprise close it out for South by Southwest Film Festival, which wrapped up last week. That was a closing night film, and it was its world premiere, which, it's the reviews on it have been pretty. It's interesting. It's been pretty amazing, because there was an article earlier this year about like how so in a quick moment, real quick, the Amazon is the distributor behind it, but they're doing kind of like breaking the mold in terms of the streamers and kind of how they go about theatrical. And Apple this week, literally today, there's articles that were breaking about Apple's plans for their theatrical releases upcoming. Specifically, I think it was the new Scorsese film, Killers of the Flower Moon, and there was one more that they were talking about, that they were going to be doing like true theatrical runs. And that was what happened with Air, which was that Ben Affleck was trying to get the movie out by the end of last year, because I think that there is a belief that this movie is like a really good movie, and that it may have been like an awards contender if it had come out before the end of the year. But Amazon is kind of seeing it as a possible commercial success, and releasing it at the end of the year among all those movies that were out, it would have completely gotten swallowed. But finding a pocket to put this kind of movie out, it may be great counter programming, but it's something unique and special, because it seems like Amazon is trying to create a new way to get these theatrical releases from these streamers, where it's getting a wide release for a protected window, I think of at least 30 or 45 days before it goes to Amazon. And Apple today, again, we're recording this on Thursday, released a statement basically saying that they're doing the same thing. So now there's all this conversation around like, well, if Amazon's doing it and Apple's doing it, how can Netflix not get behind this? When, especially if these movies make money theatrically, like, you're leaving all this on the table once again. Yeah. But Air is just special in that conversation, because it looks like it's going to be one of the first major streaming productions that it is getting a classic theatrical release, not just one of these little qualifying rounds in like two theaters. Like, it's going to be a wide release. So
it's really cool.
Yeah, so that'll be out in a couple of weeks, but hopefully we'll be able to see it next week, and we'll be able to talk about it on next week's episode. Anything else you guys want to mention? No? Nada. Movieshmovie.com is the website. YouTube.com/Movieshmovie podcast. On the Movieshmovie.com, if you want to subscribe through the audio form of the podcast, you can pick any of the platforms from there. They all link right there, or you could just listen to the podcast right on that website. Just click play in the background when you're working, just put the browser, minimize it, whatever you got to do. We appreciate it. And we'll be back next week. As always, you've made our day. Thanks.